Thank you so much for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Ruth Snyder. I'm the Executive Director for the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce. And today we are hosting the BC Salmon Farmers Association Executive Director, John Paul Fraser. He is going to be presenting their recent report outlining the economic damage that is going to be the result of the December 17th announcement by the federal government on the closing of the Discovery Island fish farms. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to John Paul Fraser for the report. Following the report, we will have a Q&A session. Please put your questions into the chat box and we will, or raise your hand. You can do that as well, raise your hand. And any questions that we don't get to, we can supply an email after the fact with answers to those questions. Thank you again for joining today, and I'll turn it over now to John Paul. John Paul?
Thank you, Mary Ruth. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up. All right, that's important. Appreciate that. Good to see so many familiar faces, including a dog, and someone standing next to a very stylish G. I want to thank everyone for joining, and really happy that this is a public session. This is an important issue for the public, and particularly in the communities of Campbell River and North. We want to talk to you a little bit today about some of the consequences that we can foresee based on our analysis as it relates to the decision made by the federal government in 2017, or sorry, on December 17th, 2020, and some of the questions that I think you may have. We're happy to answer as many as we can. We're not going to be able to get everything to everyone by 1 o'clock for sure. There is a chat function, as Mary Ruth mentioned, so we'll do our best to capture all of those questions and get back to as many folks as we can over the coming days. Anyway, it's a really great honor to be able to speak with you folks today. Michelle and I have a bit of a tag team here. That's Michelle Franz. She's our manager of communications, community and partnerships, doing a fantastic job for us, a marine biology graduate from that esteemed institution called Dalhousie, although she's an Ontarian who's spent quite a bit of time in Prince Rupert and is now a Campbell Riverite. So a huge addition to the community. Michelle, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you. So hi, everyone. As John mentioned, I'm the manager of communications, partnerships, and community with the BC Salmon Farmers Association. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of salmon farming in BC, and then I'll toss it over to John afterwards to get into the report and the results itself. So to get us started here, so Bcsfa represents about 70 members, and these are members involved in all aspects of salmon farming, not just the major producers. We also have a lot of these smaller supplier and services as well. So we are a very integrated community. Salmon farming currently supports nearly 6,500 well-paid jobs, and these are mainly in rural, coastal, Indigenous, and non-Indigenous communities. And these are full-time, year-round employment as well, which is quite important, especially because a lot of the rural coastal communities are typically employed by resource industries that are seasonal. So having an industry like salmon farming that provides year-round work is quite crucial. Salmon farmers produce more than 6.5 million meals every week. That's a lot of meals. We are currently BC's #1 seafood and agri-food export. And so we produce about 87,000 tons of salmon annually. And if you were to currently take all of the salmon farms, line them up back to back, we only take up 0.05% of the entire BC coastline. So I'll say it again. If you were to take all the salmon farms, line them up back to back, we only take up 0.05% of the entire BC coastline, and we're already BC's #1 seafood and agri-food export. So the potential for growth and the potential to lead Canada's blue economy is massive. As well as 80% of the salmon produced in BC is done in partnership and agreement with local First Nations. These agreements vary, and they're very individual based off of the nation. Every salmon farmer in BC has been certified by at least one third-party organization, such as the Aquaculture Stewardship Council. So just a little bit of information on AFC specifically. It is the most stringent certification to achieve in the world in terms of aquaculture. You have to pass at least 150 different indicators to achieve the certification. And it's not just a one-time certification. Companies have to continuously keep up with keeping the certifications, and each farm has to be certified. It's not just a certification given towards a company. And so this isn't something that the industry is required to do. They are required to follow government regulations. So achieving these third-party certifications is the industry going above and beyond what is required of them, because they want to show their commitment to sustainability. And it's to further show that we are operating in a very responsible manner within the environment that we're in. As well as farm-raised salmon is a very climate-friendly protein. So when you look at the greenhouse gas emissions and the feed conversion ratio compared to traditional terrestrial proteins such as chicken, pork, and beef, we are quite significantly lower. And so when you're looking at a human population that's going to reach 10 billion by 2050, it's very important that we support food production that is sustainable for that growing population. And so when you look at our wild resources currently, we currently don't have enough to sustain our population as it is right now, let alone by 2050. And so we want to make sure that we are supporting low carbon sustainable food production like salmon farming. And so, as we are very much all very aware of the impacts of COVID over the past year and a bit, it's had significant impacts on businesses, it's had significant impacts on jobs. And so when COVID hit, salmon farmers really wanted to investigate, how can we position ourselves to help the BC economy recover from the impacts of COVID? And so in November, we released an economic opportunity report, which the results found that by 2050, the industry was positioned to invest an additional $1.4 billion and generate nearly 10,000 new jobs. And so on a national level, this may not seem very significant, but when you're, again, looking at the fact that this industry is very prevalent in rural coastal communities, 10,000 new jobs is extremely significant, especially when a lot of these communities have traditionally been employed by resource sectors that have been declining over the past several years. And so, again, full-time year-round work, and we are very excited about releasing this report and working with the government to create these investments. And all we were asking for was just a bit of certainty that we had a future here in BC. But ultimately, there was a decision made in December, which has led for Canada's blue economy to be moving backwards rather than forward. So I'm going to show you a quick video, and then I'm going to pass it on to John to continue with the results of the report. So just give me one moment here.
My biggest thing is, what am I going to do if this shuts us down? I'm only a 3-year homeowner now. I have a child to worry about. So I think it's the closer we get, I think it'll finally start kicking in for me.
If they're closing down 30% of production without any consultation, well, where does that end? This is my home, and to have this uncertainty that it might all just disappear and be wiped away is very concerning.
Will I be able to support my family? What will I tell them? I've moved miles away from them so that I would be useful, and I'm worried that I might be useless.
We'll be out of work. The two boats will be out of work and our crew will be out of work. For the minister to make a decision like that, should have made sure all those bases are covered. Throwing the fish farms under the bus is not going to revive those rivers if we're having problems with other rivers where there is no fish farms.
It's very frustrating. I try to make a point and they tell me I'm lying or I'm bought by the industry or anything like that, because one, I put my ethics before money. I would never be in an industry where I thought they were doing harm to the environment. And two, it's just not true.
Sometimes you can't even tell people that you work in this industry because they already imagine mean, gruff, monster people growing these fish. But we're people.
Thank you, Michelle, for that intro and showing us that video. We'll get back to the presentation. Before we continue, Mary Ruth, I've been getting a fair number of texts from folks trying to get in, waiting for you to accept them. So just a shout out to those folks in the waiting room. If you can let them in, that would be terrific. Okay, so next slide, Michelle. Just some context, back in October around 2012, a key recommendation in the Cohen Commission, I won't get into that commission, I think most know about it, was that the minister had a call to make by the 2020, late 2020, September 30th, whoever that minister was, to prohibit net pen aquaculture unless he or she is satisfied that such farms pose at a minimal risk of such serious harm to the health of migrating Fraser River sockeye salmon. That's right out of the Cohen Commission report. Some people interpret recommendation 19 as, I don't know, the smoking gun or the thing that authorizes the government to eradicate the farms from the territory, from the region, but that's not actually what it says. And then fast forward to 2020, by that date, the minister at the time, Minister Jordan, still the minister, received many of the independent analysis that the Cohen Commission required to do the risk assessment, and they found that the results of these assessments concluded that the transfer of pathogens pose a minimal risk to the abundance and diversity of migrating Fraser River sockeye in the area. So in effect, all of the work in and around the Discovery Islands over that course, following the conditions laid out by the commissioner, were completed, and that bar of minimal risk was achieved. Next. However, the decision was made differently than the advice that was provided to the minister, that to phase out the salmon farms in the Discovery Islands within an 18-month period, to stipulate that no new fish of any size could be introduced into those farms, to mandate that all farms be free of fish by June 30th, 2022. And so obviously this is a very devastating decision, not one that we were predicting or anticipating based on the work that we had in the industry had carried forward from the release of the Cohen report. Next slide. These are the farms. This is the map of the area. I think most folks know what the area is. This is really more use to people in the Lower Mainland with whom we've communicated. I'll say that we've had a chance to talk and give this presentation to lots of folks. The Mount Waddington Regional District, the Campbell River Council of the Whole. Thank you, Mayor Adams, who I think is joining us today. The Village of Sayward, the Strathcona Regional District, Port Hardy Chamber, Port Hardy Rotary. I'm probably missing a few. Many letters of support from individuals, particularly, well, not particularly, but pointing out the BC Agriculture Council, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, and the BC Business Council. So it's been very heartening, the support that that the communities are getting from people right across the island, and also Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. It's been very supportive. Next slide. So the overview is really this. This is what's in the report that we released back in January, that we're looking at based on our analysis, 1,500 jobs in the area, and that's just the area, who are impacted in one way or another by aquaculture. Solid paying jobs, a lot of benefits to those families and those households. That's the number of folks, direct, indirect, and induced, that are, and this is from some very thorough analysis, which, by the way, we vetted through the Provincial Ministry of Jobs and Economic Recovery. That is the actual footprint of the industry in the area. It's about $386 million in economic output for the region. It contributes about 139 million to GDP. We estimate an annual tax revenue of over 20 million. There's over 250 suppliers of goods and services in the area that could be impacted as a result of this decision. And if it's not changed or altered in some way, we're looking at well over 10 million salmon euthanized. In court records that were filed recently in the federal court, it actually may be as much as 12 million salmon that might be euthanized. That's a significant economic value, but we've calculated that it's about 230 million meals. Of note, there's an impact in the Surrey region that we discovered because there's a lot of integration well beyond just the northern Vancouver Island. And in talking to a lot of folks in those communities, the idea that food would be perished as opposed to produced and served to people here and around the world, food that's healthy, food that's good, and food that's in demand, to that degree, 225 million plus, just seems, well, insane, is what many people are telling me. So it's about 25% of the overall sector that could be wiped out as a result of this decision. Next slide. So we produced a kind of an infographic to help people understand the connectivity between the industry, between the direct and indirect and induced impacts. You can see here that the industry is very connected regionally and beyond the region. And we thank the companies and the small, medium-sized companies that have come forward to participate in the work that we're doing. Of interest, the impact that could be felt out there really isn't among sort of the big bad multinationals. Sorry, Tina, I see you on the screen. I don't mean to call you as such, but really the industry is predominantly on an employee basis beyond the farms and the major farm companies itself. It's the smaller, medium-sized businesses that have grown up in and around the industry that really creates a fantastic integrated sector, all the way from the farm, which is at the tipping point, and then down into all the suppliers and services that support activities on the farm. Wouldn't you agree, Tina? She's nodding. Put her on the spot. Okay, next slide. So it's important, I think, to understand what we're asking for. I think, and there's been some, I think, strategic misinterpretation about what we are asking for. We've been very careful not to say that the decision should be reversed. I'll just reiterate that. Reconsidered, perhaps, because of the impact that it's going to have. There are examples elsewhere, and certainly lots of work that's been done between companies and nations right around the province, in some very recent work, to consolidate, bring people together, and figure out how to review, remove, move, alter, change, relocate in a manner that's not really on a clock, but really guided by evidence and collaboration and discussion. It can happen. It is happening. And that's effectively what we're asking for here. We didn't have an opportunity to participate in the process. That's fine. We fully respect government to government processes. But there is an opportunity for us to be a part of how to sort of implement the decisions so that we might alter the trajectory so that fewer people might be impacted and certainly fewer animals might be needlessly slaughtered. So we're asking for time, 18 months to consolidate and to do all the work that would need to be done. Is just not enough time without significant economic impact. And we're already beginning to see that take hold. People are beginning to lose their jobs, and it's very real, and it's very, very stressful for a lot of families, really at a time when you would least expect government to make a decision that would actually have such a negative impact on their livelihoods. We're asking for the transfer of those salmon that were destined for those farms. We know the science doesn't indicate that them going into those sites poses any threat. We know the regulations in that area are extremely vigorous, and a lot of the science that's been done since the Cohen report has been extremely rigorous. So we know that putting that last transfer in poses really no risk, and that's what the science actually does tell us. At a table, let's bring folks together and talk about how to do this in a collaborative way. I think that would be really constructive. And by the way, the discussions that have gone on and continue to go on well before and well into the future with nations are almost always really positive. So there's a real opportunity for everyone really to come together and try to figure out how to do this so that we might impact fewer people. You know, if you had the choice, we were on a call with the Port Hardy Chamber the other day, and I'm going to forget his name. I feel really badly. One of the counselors who's also a fire chief in the region, we were talking about how best to evacuate. It is funny, his Zoom picture behind him was an animated picture of a trial demonstration fire. So there was this fire going on in the background, and he couldn't help but point out the irony. But we were talking about how if you're going to evacuate, it's a good idea to do it with a plan as opposed to with a fire extinguisher. And that's all we're asking for here. And I think it's responsible. I think it's orderly. I think it's fair. I think it's humane. I think it brings people together. I think it provides an opportunity for reconciliation. Not that this is the ultimate example, but there are examples of reconciliation already in our sector with nations in a manner where you leave a process more united than when you enter. That's the goal. The goal is to really work towards that. And effectively, that's what we're asking to think about when it comes to this particular situation. Next slide. So we're open to questions. I know some of them are going to come my way. There are people also joining us today that know a lot more about some of the science and some of the technology that may come up on today's call, and I'd be very happy if anyone put up their hand and volunteered to answer some of the more technical questions. But we're certainly here, and not just here now, but we live and breathe, and there are opportunities after this meeting to also send us your thoughts or your ideas. Thank you.
John Paul, one of the questions that has come in is from Sue Moen, and maybe this is a question for Dean or from one of the other companies that are on the line. The question is, why can't you do this on land as suggested? Hang on, wait. You were muted. Okay, go ahead.
That's me. Also, I just noticed that my friend Dean Dobrinsky has been able to navigate the
yes, he's here.
Supremely secure firewall. And Dean may have a few comments because his company is really on the front lines and is in particular being impacted. Dean, did you want to add it to anything that I said there before I get to Mary Ruth's question?
No, I apologize for the lateness. I was trying to figure out my so no, John, I don't have anything to add to that. I can start with thanking you all for having us today and giving the opportunity to bring forward this really pertinent issue to our area, for sure. To answer your question, Sue, as best I can, at this present time, all of our hatchery processes, all of those processes are actually land-based processes. We have MOE itself has two of the most state-of-the-art recirculating aquaculture systems in the world near Sayward. The moving salmon aquaculture on a commercial basis, on a scale basis, has not been done successfully anywhere in the world to this point. And that those type of projects will require, basically they require a significant investment in capital. They require proven technology. They require the land base, the land mass, and they require access to commercial markets, all of which we don't have on this end of the world. The issue with salmon farming, and I apologize, I was a little frantic trying to get through my electronic channels here, so I haven't framed myself very well. But over the last 12 years, or sorry, last 8 years, there's been significant study with respect to the impact of salmon farming on the wild salmon. And those studies found that salmon farming poses less than minimal risk to the wild salmon. So our objective here is to continue to farm in the ocean in a very sustainable, very ongoing way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dean. And there are lots of scientists on the call too. Appreciate that. And the question of land-based aquaculture is fascinating. The companies, many on this call, are pioneers in the technology. And I'm sure that pioneering work will continue. I think what we're also really talking about here is the here and now. It's today. It's what's happening in our communities. It's knowing that over the last 9 years with this particular region, we have undergone a bit of a scientific colonic, to be somewhat graphic, and come through based on all of the metrics and independent science that was required to make a decision to go forward. So I think we all feel really confident with the level of expertise and sophistication and technology that's already active in the Discovery Islands area.
Okay, I see Ernest Alexander Alfred has his hand up. Ernest, I'm going to unmute you. Do you have a question regarding the economic damage? Hang on, I'm just trying to get you unmuted. Oh, you've disappeared. Where did he go?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you for addressing me. Nugwa am Kwakwa Balas Gay Klaka Winagwisa Sanampis. My name is Kwakwa Balas, and I'm joining you from the unceded territory of the Numpis First Nation. I did come here for a specific reason. I'm not going to entertain Michelle's fairy tales a little, but I do want to talk directly to Mr. Fraser, Mr. John Paul Fraser, because I've got in front of me an article and address the North Island mayors like Andy Adams and
as I explained at the beginning of the meeting, this has to do with the economic damage report. We are not going to entertain questions about the article that came out this morning. That's a totally different topic. And it's not what this Q&A is about. So if you're not here to ask questions about the damage report and engage with John Paul and the scientists and the companies that are here, then I'm sorry, you won't be able to ask a question. There has been a lot of other opportunity in other forums for everybody to speak with regards to pro wild stocks, and this is not pro salmon farming. This is simply about the damage report and allowing the community who are being affected by it to ask questions. So if you have a question regarding the closure of the farms and what that means, I'm happy to entertain your question.
I think there was a slight mute issue there with everyone. So can you hear me again?
Yes, go ahead,
Okay,
John.
I wasn't able to unmute there, so thank you. Okay, other questions, Mary Ruth?
Sue Moen had a follow-up question. And I guess this would be more to Dean. I don't know why it's not letting me. Okay. And the question is, what would it take to make the local industry to make those investments now that you spoke about, what it would take to move not just the initial land-based aspect that you have in place now, but what would it take to expand that to allow the salmon to grow to their full maturity?
Well, what it would take is as John Paul talked about, what it would take for us is the minister to relook at the decision to allow us to transfer the salmon that's within our operational cycle into the Discovery Islands. That would allow us to continue the investment into sustainable salmon farms, into the science that we continue to do, and into those relationships, so that we can grow out the salmon that's already within our system.
Sue, does that answer your question? Okay. So Ron Kerr has his hand up, as well as Tara McDonald. Ron, I'm going to start with you just a second while I get you unmuted. I don't know why it's not letting me unmute you. Go ahead, Ron.
Thanks, Mary Ruth, for putting the presentation on today. And thanks, John Paul and Michelle, for your presentation. It's good to see you again. I'm one of the city councilors from Campbell River. So my question is, have you heard anything directly from Minister Jordan and his staff since the December announcement?
No, I think this is the other thing that is pretty troubling, is that we're 5.5 months into this and we haven't heard a thing. We haven't had any engagement. There's been no reach out from Minister Jordan. She's been, or her staff, about the implications of the decision. In fact, the provincial government then took up the mantle to try to get their attention, even offered in a letter that they made public to put together a team of public servants to analyze and assess the impact, so that government might help people through this, particularly at this difficult time for families. And nothing, not even the provincial minister of job and economic recovery can get a response from the government. I think the answer to that is you'll look, and it was made clear through some of the court filings, that the government and the minister ignored the advice of her own officials very directly, very explicitly. And I think it's making it difficult for people to understand really what the path is and how to help. And so when officials and governments try to engage on decisions that are so outside the box of advice, they don't then know how to advise. Mm-hmm. And we're sort of in this sort of odd place. And now we have a federal court ruling that permits, that really strikes the ministers, that grants an injunction that allows Dean's company and Saltstream to reapply for transfer. I won't get into and try to interpret a legal ruling, other than to say that it was fairly unequivocal about the fact that the decision to not permit those transfers fails in a lot of ways, in particular science-based decision making.
So if I could have a second question from a political point of view, have you got any suggestions of things we can do locally to get her out of her condo back to Nova Scotia and answer some of these questions?
I'm trying.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I know that many governments and local councils are issuing correspondence. We've personally, through some of the work that we started through our two projects, Coastal Jobs Gone and Discovery Damage, sent a tremendous amount of correspondence that way. Tara McDonald, Dr. McDonald on the call, on this Zoom call, wrote, I would think, probably one of the most inspirational letters to the Prime Minister about science and about youth and about worry and about economic impact on this question that exists. And we've made all those letters public, or as many as we can. We're not getting anything back. We're now beginning to be able to demonstrate the impact that it's having on families in the Surrey region, knowing that Surrey is, those are real facts, and knowing that the Surrey region is quite important to this government. I think they're beginning to notice that, yeah, there are some real negative consequences that are beginning to clearly show themselves as a result of this decision. So please, Councillor Kerr, talk to Mayor Adams. Appreciate everyone getting active.
Tara McDonald, you had your hand up, so if...
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, wait, hang on. We could, hang on. There we go. Go ahead, Tara.
Hi, thanks, John, for putting this on today. I just had one comment, and then I did have a question on the economic side as well. In response to Sue's question, thank you very much for asking. I do have a bit of experience in the land-based sector. And the truth is that it's not even necessarily a question of investment either. That's not the whole part of the equation. A big chunk of the equation as well as the technology, what's available. And simply put, on a really large scale, land-based Atlantic salmon farming hasn't proven to be economically viable or a sound investment. It's something that we're seeing multiple examples of in various parts of the world, that to do it on a really large scale, it has its issues, and it's something that the technology needs to catch up with the desire to move to very large land-based facilities. It's something that, of course, is undergoing a lot of innovation, but as John said, we're looking at the here and now, and the technology, not just the investment, but the technology itself actually isn't exactly where we need it just yet for that to be viable. And then in terms of a question, back when the city council election was going on, there was a statistic, I think it was Sean Smythe who talked about it in his campaign.
He's actually on the call.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Sean. Where there was a discussion around the closure of the pulp mill and what that did to our taxes in Campbell River. I did not live in Campbell River at the time, but I do now. And the potential for really vastly increased taxes on a percent basis is something that's really concerning to me as someone who lives here. Is there any comment as to, do we have any idea of what that tax increase could look like? Just due to revenue.
I'm not sure whether, I know Mayor Adams is also on the call. Mayor Adams, did you want to address the tax question? I can't find you. As soon as I can find you and unmute you, there you go. There you go.
Thank you, Mary Ruth. What I can say is for Councillor Kerr and myself and other members of the current council were around and experienced the closure of the mill, which resulted in a spike of up to 13.6% tax increase in the middle of that peak period, which was a significant blow to the economy of Campbell River. We have yet to calculate what the impact or damage potentially could be, but it's not just us. It's Port McNeill, it's Port Hardy, it's Gold River, it's Sayward, it's even Nanaimo, and as John Paul stated, Surrey. But I really want to just briefly touch on that we are advocating for a science and technology based industry that preserves the wild stock and our oceans and rivers and streams in perpetuity for everyone. And it's unfortunate that The majority of the information that I released through the Freedom of Information was not shared. And I guess sometimes the science and technology and facts just don't make the cut for sensationalism. So that's unfortunate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Does that answer your question, Tara? Oh, I gotta unmute her again.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. And Sulin Cedar has a question.
Thank you.
Sulin, go ahead.
Thank you. So we're talking about economics. So I do want to stay on topic. And this is a serious question to each of you who are speaking for the industry. Does your damage report include calculations for colonization, for the impact on the First Nations of this region and the wild food that's required for these nations to thrive?
Thank you. John Paul, there you go.
Well, thank you for the question. And I would say that one of the big and most important developments in aquaculture over the last decade, maybe before, but certainly what I've noticed in my limited time is the growing participation and trust and collaboration with Indigenous communities in our industry. I'm heartened by, for example, the Kisuhehe and the leadership that that nation shows up in Klemtu, where they actually own the farm, and the company Moe for 20 years has worked with them in building and helping grow their community. And listening and talking to the folks up there about what that means to their community is actually what makes my job worthwhile. Listening to John Smith, listening to the House It leadership, listening to some of the folks in the Guasla and Aquarach, listening to Chief Walkus and many of the folks who work in his company, listening to others, and knowing that collaboration, that partnership, true partnership, and seeing the level of interest growing, the level of collaboration in science, shared decision making, some of the stuff that's ongoing really in the Zabalas area, where that Grieg is working on, that Moe is working on, that Cermak is working on, that we're all working on. Seeing some of the stuff that Aaron Joe's company down in Seashell, in terms of ancillary businesses attached to aquaculture. Listening to folks talking about how being on the water and working and learning and the skills, and knowing that by being crafts farmers in the ocean, working with animals and minimizing the impact on the wild population has been really the thing that's been most, I think is the most important path forward for the industry.
Thank you. Okay, my error. Perhaps I should say the First Nations governments. We're asking for absolute recognition of the place of the First Nations governments and the sovereignty rights. I do understand that there are First Nations people working in the industry and needing to pay their mortgage payments, etc. There are many problems. I don't feel there's easy solutions. But this woman's work, I trust. You know what side I'm on, and it's for the side of the earth. So I'd really like y'all to reconsider and be ecological. Thank you.
Thanks, Sulin. We had a follow-up question with regards to the land base, and I think that Tara has addressed that in the chat. So if anybody has any other questions about the land-based aspect, Tara McDonald, who is a scientist, she has addressed that in the chat. And if you have any more questions about the land-based possibilities moving forward, you can put it in the chat. And if it's not answered today, we would put that on our website after. Amit, you're next. I'm just waiting to unmute you. There you go. Amit, you have a question?
Hi, Ruth. Thank you for the opportunity to brainstorm and to talk about this issue. So one thing that I haven't seen from the economic impact, it's basically on the scientific institutions that the aquaculture in general like brought to Campbell River and the scientific community that is mainly represented by young people. And I think this is like a big economic stimulator for Campbell River and like coastal communities in general. So I'm wondering if John Paul estimated the impact on science and innovation in Campbell River.
John Paul, who would that?
Okay, thank you. I would open it, so if anyone wants to put up their hand to support the answer. I'm aware that, look, I think when something like this happens, it's going to have impacts that are unanticipated and unfortunate, and they're going to go far beyond the employee on the farm. We tried to show in that graph just how complicated the multiplier impact of a decision like this can have on a community that has grown up around aquaculture, sustainable aquaculture. And I fully expect that if the degradation of this business activity occurs, that it could have an impact on scientific efforts, on scientists, whether they be affiliated with research institutions, universities, or are contracted to work with companies to provide independent scientific advice. I don't really think there's anyone immune by it. So I guess scientifically speaking, the toxicity of this decision really is going to be felt by everyone in the community. And I don't know if any of our veterinarians or biologists or anyone else on the line would want to add to that answer.
And Sean Smythe had a follow-up question. Sean, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Ruth. Thanks for putting this on, by the way. And Ahmed, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit with your question, because I was hoping to ask John Fraser, do you have an idea of how many spin-off contract companies are affected this? I know it's a complicated, but you should have some sort of number, and not just what they are. Like, I know there's lots of trucking companies affected. There's welders affected. I know a couple of these companies. I was amazed at how many I ran into in my campaign. But it'd be also nice to know how many like post-secondary biologists and specialists that are in the industry and these companies that are affected by this.
Excellent question. We'll make sure, I don't know if you had a chance, Sean, to read the analysis. I can put you in touch with our economist. We pulled together a really broad list of supplier companies, technology firms. Poseidon as an example, just up the road, you've got about 20 people in there. Not many of them don't have engineering degrees and are really at the top of their game when it comes to engineering solutions and aquaculture technologies for the purpose of environmental sustainability. They're worried. We've been able to demonstrate, because we ask these questions from producers and then down, who you work with, what kind of work do they do? So we'll be happy to follow up with you on that. But it's the problem with reports like the one we produced. All that we can do is try to show the footprint of what currently is as best as we can assess at the time, and we didn't have a lot of time. But who knows where the impact will ultimately land? But we know it's going to land, and it's going to land someplace. And that's the problem with all of this, is the uncertainty at exactly the wrong time for any community in Canada trying to work itself through this very difficult period. But I'd be happy, Sean, to follow up with you, and maybe you and I and Doug Blair, the economist who wrote the report, can dive into some of those questions with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. I love to geek out on stuff like that.
No problem.
Thanks, Sean. Angela, you had a question?
Hi, yeah, I'm just wondering, how is it that, like, will there ever be enough environmental damage for the farms to say it's time to move out? Because we know the sea lice are out of control. And for the first time in Okasolo Channel, it's already showing just in one season with the farms fallowed there, they caught 50 wild salmon and there was only 9 sea lice on 50 salmon. Last year it was 9 lice per fish. So how can jobs trump the environment is what I'm asking.
Okay, thanks for your question.
Thank you. I don't think anyone on this call would advocate for that. But if anyone has any direct information to deal with the sea lice question that Angela has, feel free.
I would say if somebody wanted to address that, they could do it in the chat. Angela did ask the question in the chat box, so you can just reply there. Sorry, I have 3 screens of people that I have to keep flipping back and forth to see if anybody has their hand up. So I appreciate your patience while I maneuver through all of the various screens. I guess the follow-up question, I don't see, does anybody have any more questions right now? I don't see any hands up. Oh, there's one. Okay.
There, hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you for, I finally figured out how to get on there. But anyway, I live in the Discovery Islands. My family's lived here for 50 years. Nobody came to us when they first came to set up the fish farms here, and it's had a disastrous effect along with many other effects on our ability to earn a living based on the wild salmon economy that already and for many, many decades has existed in the Discovery Islands and in the whole North Island area. And, you know, I would like to know, first of all, how many people are right now employed on the Discovery Islands fish farms that are slated for removal, because I know for a fact that most of them are sitting empty. So I don't believe that there's 6,500 jobs that are going to be lost directly by the closure of the Discovery Islands fish farms. And so I am curious about the numbers and how you come up with them. That's one part of my question. And the other part is that, you know, many of us are, well, we're residents, small business operators and owners, and we have we also spend a lot of money in Campbell River and on the North Island in all sorts of different businesses and anything from fuel to groceries to hardware. You know, many operations spend a lot of money in Campbell River. I myself know that because I've worked in some of the big fishing lodges in the Stewart Island area. And so nobody ever mentions the people who live in the Discovery Islands or the First Nations of this area or what they wish to have in their area. And it's all very well for Campbell River, the towns, the mayors and everybody else to speak about industry and what should happen and all the rest of it, economic growth and all the rest of it. But you never talk to us who live here in this area And, you know, we have invested lots of money, lots of time. Many of our lives have been invested in this area. And, you know, I don't ever hear anybody addressing that. So I guess my question is, what do you have to say to the people of the area who do not want the fish farms here because they are damaging the wild salmon runs all the way from the Broughton Archipelago to the South Fraser River? And this is also affecting the economies of all the towns and villages and nations that are not just on the coast, but up all the rivers of BC. So, you know, I know you're talking about the specific economics. So my specific question is, how many people today are employed in the fish farm sites in the Discovery Islands, right? Directly employed, because, you know, we could all talk about spin-offs, but I'm asking about the direct employees right this minute in the Discovery Islands.
Okay, thanks, Claudia.
I think Caitlin has her hands up because I think she might be one of those farmers that you're talking about. Just in the analysis, we never said that 6,500 jobs are going to be lost. That's the overall impact of the industry across the province. Families who are supported by aquaculture activities. In terms of direct jobs on farms, our report points out over 200 people are directly employed on farms, but the direct impact also goes into other frontline operations, and that's around 500 people in support. But it goes on beyond in terms of the indirect and then the induced employment. And as I said earlier, it's really those jobs that are also very much on the line, and those are small, medium-sized businesses who contribute a significant amount to the local economy. But I'm going to stop talking right now and let Caitlin answer your question, because you want to know if there's anyone who actually works on a farm on the call. Caitlin.
Hi there. Yes, so I'm a water quality technician, and I am also a farmer. I work in the Broughton Archipelago, but I can say firsthand that there are many of my friends that are sitting at home right now. They have lost their jobs. They're wondering how they're going to pay their mortgage. How are they going to put their kids in summer camp? Firsthand, I've seen it. So yes, it is happening. And it's not only the farmers that are in the Campbell River, it is a huge ripple effect. There are warehouse people who have lost their jobs unexpectedly in all of areas. Yeah, this is not to be taken lightly. This is happening. There are people losing their jobs. In our area, we are trying to give people who are from the Campbell River area some spots. So people are being shuffled around. We're trying to mitigate doing that way, but there just simply isn't enough jobs for all of us right now. So yeah, it's happening and it's real.
Thank you, Caitlin. I saw somebody else's hand up. Where did it go? John Paul, did you want to follow up on what Caitlin had to say?
Oh, just I really appreciate Caitlin's comments and really her advocacy also for particularly the youth of the industry and young women in the sector. She and Michelle and the Youth Council are a real powerhouse in trying to get information out about just what it is we do and who does what we do. It's maybe a little unexpected that you would have such a young, vibrant workforce in aquaculture in the north coast of our province. It's fantastic. But I think, yeah, no, I'm fine. Thank you, Caitlin, very much. And if there's any other folks that are active working on farms that are feeling the impact so that we can demonstrate that this is real, and you want to say something now, maybe go for it.
I think Claudia had a follow-up question that she put in the chat that she was asking specifically, and I'm not sure if the people that are on the line that work for the actual companies would have this information right now about how many people work specifically on the farms in the Discovery Island.
It's 222. Okay. 222. Said that, it's in our report. Okay. 468 are other frontline operations. Those are directly impacted jobs.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that doesn't include the supporting industries that support those?
No, we've calculated over 600 indirect impacted jobs based on our analysis, and also on about 215 induced potential impacts. and we ran this economic data, the input-output models through analysts within the provincial government, their statisticians, and 100% verified.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody have any other questions about the economic impact?
Well, I appreciate it. I know that we're past time. The opportunity to communicate. I appreciate really the support and the camaraderie in the community of Campbell River around this. There are a lot of people hurting and a lot of people worried, and really nothing the government has done since the decision has allayed any of that. In fact, their silence has only exacerbated it. And I just encourage everyone to keep at it. I know we will, and hopefully we can find a different path that allows for this decision to have a fewer impact on more people.
Okay, and what I would do is I would direct everybody, if you have any more questions, there are a multitude of links and reports both on our website and on the BC Salmon Association website that detail all of the reports, and you can go through those reports yourselves and you can pull out any questions you have about there, and you can email John Paul and Michelle directly if you have any further questions. Michelle, what would you like to say?
Sorry, just really quickly, I just wanted to say, follow up on John, just to say thank you for everyone who took the time to listen to this presentation and to ask questions. I think this is a very great example about the fact that it is important to have respectful dialogue and to ask respectful questions. You may not necessarily agree with everything that we're all saying, but it's important that we do respect each other and just listen to what each other has to say. And I do appreciate people who may not necessarily agree with what we're saying, but took the time to listen, because I think that it is a very divisive topic, but it is important that we do try to work together because we're all working towards the same thing, and that is to provide a solution to help wild salmon stocks. And so we may not necessarily agree on how to go about that, but I think that it is important that we work together. And so again, thank you for the people who took the time to be here. And yeah.
I would echo Michelle's comments. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you, John Paul and Michelle, for your time and for sharing the reports and going through them with us. And again, if anybody has any further questions, you can email John Paul Fraser. His email can be found on the BC Salmon Farmers Association website. As well, you can go through our website, campbellriverchamber.ca, and the reports are posted there and on their website.